So just coming on to training. So I know a lot of the webinars have mostly been about like nutrition and mindset and stuff, but training is just as important for the results that you're wanting. It doesn't just have to be physique results. It can be, absolutely anything, health, whatever. So what we're going to run through today is importance of strength training reminder, because like I've just mentioned there, I feel a lot of the time we just constantly think that it is just about like losing weight, building muscle, when there's so many more benefits of it. Training intensity, training form and tempo, looking at different muscle fibers and ranges. Sorry, I'm just gonna admit Ruth in. There we go. Is she in? Yeah. Progressive overload, how and why we want to make sure we're progressing in training. Difference between compound and isolation exercises, and then just some like quick myth busting and reminders. So it sounds like this is going to take ages. Trust me, it won't. So coming on to the importance of strength training. So first of all is obviously your lean muscle tissue and metabolic adaptation. So the more lean muscle tissue that we have, the higher our metabolic rate. So that basically means you can do like less and your body is literally, it's just burning calories, more calories being at rest compared to if you don't have a lot of muscle tissue. So, when like some people will say, oh, like I'm skinny fat, like it's a horrible phrase, but we've all like heard of it. It basically is like someone might be lean, but they don't have like the shapes and stuff, and they probably can't like eat that much. It's like a really like weird like in between. So we want to make sure we're getting more lean muscle. Just as I said, it means you're going to be able to eat more. Insulin sensitivity. So the more muscle mass that we have, the better your blood sugar balance will be, especially for those who are a little bit more resistant. So anyone, watching this who has PCOS or whatever, it helps your body use glucose more effectively, and it's even higher post-training. And then the third one is obviously it reduces cardiovascular disease a lot. So it helps lower cholesterol and also your blood pressure. So yes, as I keep saying, it's fine to want to go in and, focus on training for your physique, but there's so many other things too. The second one is bone density. So particularly as women, we want to make sure protecting our bones as much as possible, and weight training makes our bones stronger, but also as well, it increases the muscle mass around our bones, which, like I said, it reduces the risk factor of low bone mineral density, which is quite a common thing, particularly for women who are perimenopausal or menopausal. I can't even stress like the impacts of some type of resistance training. So, whether it's like your parents or like your grandma or whatever, anything, or yourself going through menopause, like the impact weight training can have on making sure that you're keeping everything strong, you're reducing your risk of osteoporosis is massive. So that's why as women, we need to make sure we're always pushing weight training, because when you go through menopause, genuinely, you are going to thank yourself so much. And then the third one is obviously body image. So with training, and you might think, oh, I want to look toned. The only way to look toned is building muscle mass and building muscle tissue whilst obviously losing body fat. So if you are just constantly like doing really light weights or like not doing resistance training, not pushing yourself, you aren't going to create that toned up that you've got in your head, because we have to make sure we're putting on muscle mass in order to get that look. And also in regards to body image, studies and the impacts of body image when you're weight training without actual weight loss is huge. So basically it's a study, people weight training, people not weight training. The people who weight trained, even though it wasn't to lose body fat and they didn't lose body fat, their body image and how they felt in themselves and the self-confidence was so much higher. So that's why as well, like training, it's everything outside of just your physique. So coming on to training intensity, and this can be a hard one, and particularly when you're finding your feet with training, it might be something quite new. So where should it actually be sitting? So this is probably going to change on the day. So let's say, for example, one day you might be feeling amazing, you're smashing it, and you're just going hell for leather intensity wise. Some days you won't. But a good way to sort of look at it is the RIR scale, which is this scale here on the right. So when we look at this, it's between 6 to 10. number 6 is like, you probably could have got like 4 more reps. Like if you really, really tried, you probably would have got 4 more reps. Number 10 is when you literally have like fully failed that rep and like your muscles just completely exhausted. Where you are on the scale, we sort of want to be sitting on a number 9, where you could have probably done 1 more rep. So between like 8 and a 9. You are probably, and again, we're all the same, but you're probably lower on the scale that you think. So when you're training, in your head, you might be thinking, yeah, I'm definitely a 9. I always do it, so I've only got 1 rep. You are probably more of a 7. And it can sometimes be a little bit harder when like you're training yourself and stuff, but you will be very surprised on how much potential and how many more reps in the tank you actually have. As in, like, if you literally had a gun to your head, I can probably say you will get like 2 or 3 more reps compared to what you perceive as your maximum. So we want to have that mentality of just thinking, right, do you know what? I'm just going to go with it. And something that I use is like, if I really want to push myself in the gym, I'll literally just say to myself, like, mind my French, like, fuck it. Like, what is the worst thing that can happen? If I'm on a leg press and I'm like, I'm going to put another 10 kg on, what is the worst that can happen? Like, it's not going to squish you. If the worst thing that would happen on leg press is that you just like, you're at the bottom, it's not going to go any further than that because there's all safety features, or it's going to mean that you only get 4 reps rather than what you expected. What is the worst that can happen? And sometimes just have to have that mentality. There are, of course, things within reason in terms of if you're doing like a squat, you don't want to be putting yourself at risk of failing a squat because you could injure yourself. But stuff like dumbbell shoulder press, machine shoulder press, like all stuff like that, nothing is going to go bad if you fail that rep. So you want to be in a place where you think, I probably could have like maybe just got 1 more in the tank, or you've failed it. When you're more advanced, like the more advanced a lifter there is, you need to push more with training in order to get results compared to someone who is quite new to training. So if you're quite new to training, whatever sort of resistance you're sort of doing in the gym, you're going to start to build muscle anyway. It's sort of called like newbie gains. Whereas the more advanced you get, you are going to have to make sure you're pushing this like number 9 at least, in order to see like some good progress in building muscle tissue. Obviously, there's different impacts and stuff. So you're going to have good days and bad days. You are not going to go into the gym and push yourself to have like a number 9 or a number 10. There's so many times I've been in the gym and I've probably been at a number 6, right? Being completely honest, because just my mentality has not been there. I'm not feeling great. There might be personal stuff going off. I might be due on my cycle and I'm just like not vibing. That is absolutely fine. But on the good days, push yourself. Another big impact as well on training intensity, even little things like your playlist. Like, have you got a good playlist going, or are you just listening to like the gym music? So make sure you've got something that really gets you in the zone and blocks out everything. Coming on to training form and tempo. So tempo of training is really, really important. So I would much rather you use a lower weight that is controlled rather than a higher weight that's rushed, because more progress in terms of building muscle tissue is going to come from having a lower weight that's controlled and you actually get a really good connection with it. Women, we aren't so bad at this. It's mostly men, but drop the ego. Like, no one cares what you are lifting. Like, I used to use 6 kg lateral raises, right? I had to go back to 2 kg at one point because like I just didn't feel right, and then I just progressed myself back up. No one cared. And at that point I was training like a really big like bro bodybuilding gym. Literally no one cared. Like, just make sure you drop the ego and you're using a weight where you feel comfortable with, you connect with it well, because that is what's going to allow you to progress. Momentum, so we want to make sure we're not using momentum in exercises, because even if, let's say, a lat pull down where you bring that bar down to here, if you're swinging like this, right, you're not actually using the muscle as much to pull that weight, so you're not going to grow the muscle. It's not going to break down to then regrow. You're just using momentum. Cool, like, you've hit a PB, but what is it actually doing? So just remember those little things there. My muscle connection and pauses is a huge thing that I always push. So even little things like closing your eyes whilst doing the rep can sometimes help just show like you just want to concentrate. So I'm just going to use the example of like a leg press again, just because it's an easy one. When you're doing that leg press, it could be that you literally close your eyes and I just want you to think of like the actual muscle. Like for me personally, a lot of people don't understand what I'm saying when I say this, but I literally like imagine like my muscle fibers like ripping and like coming apart, and I don't know, but to me that just allows me to connect to the movement so much better. So really think about the muscle you're using, squeeze, pause at the top. If you're doing a kickback, when you're at the top, squeeze that glute for a good second and then control it back and constantly keep tension within that muscle. If you need to, do warm-ups before. So if there's an exercise where you feel that you maybe don't connect for it too well, having some things like some booty bands before. So before you go into a hip thrust, you might grab some booty bands and do some abductions just to get your mind connected to the muscle that you want to use in the exercise. In regards to like form, so if you're not doing it correctly, you're losing so much potential while still in high effort in. So let's say with a hip thrust, right? Why I always bang on about form and why I say like send your form videos over and stuff is because if you're say doing a hip thrust and you push yourself really hard, like you're on that number 9 of the scale, you're really trying hard, but then your legs are in a completely different position, so it's not actually hitting the muscle properly. You're going through all the effort, but you're not going to reap the rewards of it. Compared to if you just stripped everything down, got your form perfected, and then progress from there. So that's just a really important one that a lot of people, we all forget. Like I still record myself training, I look back and think, Paige, slow down. Like it's very normal, but just make sure you're always thinking of it. So coming on to muscle fibers. So this is quite a new thing, and it's not something to get like obsessed with or anything like that, but it's just pretty interesting. So with muscle fibers, you have 2 different types. You have type 1 and type 2. And as you go through the coaching, you may start to see that I start to implement different rep ranges. So it might be, let's say a lat pull down again. For the first 2 sets, you're expected to do 6 to 8 reps. And then your third set, you might have to do 12 to 15. You're probably thinking, what's the point? So the reason for it is type 1 muscle fiber is slow twitch. That's more your endurance. So that is for rep ranges 12 and above. So obviously you'd use a lower weight. Then you've got muscle fiber type 2, which is fast twitch, which is more like power. So that's for your rep ranges 4 to 11, and you'd obviously use a higher weight because you're not having to do as many reps. So if we have a mixture of both of those in training, it's going to mean that you're hitting both muscle fibers. The research on it needs to be worked on a bit more, but there's enough there for like it'd be silly not to implement it if you're starting to advance in your training, you're in the gym. So that's just a quick one if you're ever sort of wondering why is there 2 different types of rep ranges. It's to hit both muscle fibers. So progressive overload. So you'll do it anyway, it's quite a natural thing, but just to re-go over it, because sometimes we can get a little bit like comfortable with weights and where we're sort of sitting. So progressive overload is basically increasing volume in some way in training over time to get stronger or have more endurance. So your muscles have to be constantly stimulated or challenged or they will plateau. And obviously it gets harder the more you train. So when you're first starting to train, you'll probably find you're progressing really quickly, you know, your reps are going up, your weight's going up really quick. Whereas obviously when you start to advance more and it becomes more of like a constant thing of training, you're not going to like be able to progress as quickly, because if so, like people have been squatting like 500 kilograms, like it will slow down, but you've just got to see how you can do it. So different ways you can progress is obviously reps. So making sure, right, if I hit 11 reps last time, I'm going to try and hit 12. That is a form of progressive overload. If I've given you in your program, say a rep of 8 to 12, and you get to 12 and you've still got more in the tank, keep on going. Just keep on going. The next time you do it, you know you can do heavier. Weight, so obviously increasing your weight. So again, don't put pressure on this of having to shoot it up. Add a couple of kilograms. You've still progressed, because over time that's going to add up a lot. Pauses, so particularly for those who home train, there's obviously a little bit of like a limit in terms of how much you can progress. So adding in like little pauses, adding in little pulses to training is just going to help increase that. In the gym, it is easier to progress, like it really is. When you're at home, like I said, you are a little bit more confined. It may be after a certain amount of time you need to advance your kit a little bit more, or add in the gym as like a hybrid split if you're really wanting to like progress and really make sure like you're adding on muscle tissue and getting stronger. So for some people, they might say train at the gym on a weekend when they've got more time, but they might do 1 or 2 home training sessions. Quite a lot of girls do that. So it was always different options there. Coming on to these, so compound and isolation exercises. So what even are these? So in your training, you won't have realised, but you will have a mixture of these in. So compound exercises, exercises which use like multiple muscles. They're like your real like staple exercises. They're probably always going to be included in your training program because we always want to get stronger at them. And as I said on that next bullet point, like you want to get strong with these, like you want to make sure you're really pushing with them. They're probably a little bit easier to progress rather than the next types. And examples of them are like squats, deadlifts, RDLs, leg press, and you could even maybe put hip thrust in there. Some would argue hip thrust is an isolation exercise, but a good strong hip thrust is amazing and it helps everything else. And then isolation exercise. So these are to help target more specific areas for growth. So let's say, for example, you're like, I really want to focus on growing my glutes. That's a massive thing for me. Then we'll, alongside the main ones, we will add in some like kickbacks, abductions, you know, more isolation ones, because these can make it very individual to you on what areas you want to progress in the most, or areas that are just lagging a bit. So finally, I knew this one wouldn't take long, is just coming on to the myth busting side of stuff. So you've probably seen on social media so much at the moment about like cortisol and all this stuff. Weight training, you know, increases cortisol too much. It does increase cortisol, which is stress hormone, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. If you train too much without recovery, then it's an issue. And when I say too much, like I am talking like weight training 4 or 5 times a week with cardio every single day for like 60 to 90 minutes. So when you see like these bodybuilders on prep, that is too much. That is too much volume and they're probably not recovering in the best way. That is when it becomes an issue. However, the positive impacts of stress outweigh the increase in cortisol training causes. So the impact stress has on reducing stress levels and making you feel good, even though it increases cortisol, it all like rebalances out anyway. And also cortisol, it's not a bad thing. Without it, you'd be dead. So don't, this is sort of going off topic, but don't allow yourself to get scaremongering about cortisol and stuff. Yes, it is an issue for people, and I've had clients where it's been an issue and I've had to really work on it. But overall, it's fine. Right? It's absolutely fine. It'll make me bulky. So this is what a lot of women are worried about, of being too bulky. So when you are training, it is so hard for women to build muscle. Like when you are probably like seeing these, I don't like to compare like people and stuff, but if you're seeing like Instagram girls and the fitness girls and stuff, and you're like, oh my god, that she looks amazing, she's toned, that's what I want to look like. She has spent years weight training hard. She has honestly been going at it, lifting heavy weights, because that is what creates that tone physique. There's a very big change at the moment of obviously Pilates and home workouts. I'm not against it, I love Pilates, but when you're sort of like visualizing their physique, a lot of the time we've spent years bodybuilding and like really pushing hard in training. So I've built all the foundations, and once you've built it, it's really easy to maintain. And then they've gone on to home training and Pilates. So just like be aware there, this is where social media can just get a little bit confusing. But like I said, building muscle for women is hard. When you're seeing women who are maybe really bulky, like the real like bodybuilders, powerlifters, you are never going to end up like that. Like you're just not. It is literally their whole life. Like I experienced this literally like it is all they do. A lot of them use assistance in regards to steroids, a very, very common and normal thing in the bodybuilding area. So you are not going to get too bulky, like trust me. And also the third one sort of links in, I just want to tone. The more muscle mass you have and a low, reducing body fat, that is what's going to give you that toned physique that you're wanting. So that is pretty much everything.